Love to.
Walter R. Yetnikov.
What can I do? I'm John Bon Jovi.
I was president.
I'm president.
Chairman.
I'm the chairman.
Of CBS Records.
Of In Excess.
Hi, I'm Bill Clinton. I'm president of the United States.
My job is
Songwriter.
I sing.
I sing.
Piano player. I play guitar.
We'd all like to know what I'm supposed to be doing.
MC Fusion, critic to the nation.
Former manager of Led Zeppelin.
I manage the group Dire Straits.
Security chief for Metallica.
Promotions to Bowen.
I'm a magician. And I want your vote.
Music is a $30 billion global industry built on deals. Telephone number deals have been around for a while, but now they seem to include area codes. Are they all worth it? Well, the Stones' sold-out world tour means back catalogue should shift again for the Virgin signings. It seems a sound investment. Madonna becomes a one-woman entertainment industry with a $60 million multimedia package from Time Warner. That's 7 albums over 7 years, movies, videos, and her own label. But is familiarity breeding contempt with the public? Virgin coughed up $40 million for Michael Jackson's kid sister, outstripping her brother. But not for long. A few days later, he renegotiated with Sony for $65 million. But is it money well spent in light of recent allegations, cancelled Pepsi sponsorship, a truncated tour, and the relative dud of his last album, Iffy? Since he changed his name, the artist formerly known as Prince, TAFCAP for short, has seen sales dip. Perhaps buyers don't know where to look in the racks. His recent hit single wasn't even on a Warner's label. Is their $100 million looking extravagant? Garth Brooks' deal looks modest enough, no cash up front. Instead, a 50% royalty for the next 20 years. With a $400 million gross over the last 5, simple arithmetic says he and the company stand to split $1 billion. Rock gods who struck rock bottom in the 80s, Aerosmith, get a new lease of life from Sony in a $30 million deal.
I'm going to disappear. Mula Banda.
And they still got 2 more albums to do for Geffen. Could be 96 before Sony sees any product, if the aging ninjas stay on the wagon.
Mula Banda is number 1. We live for Mula Banda. We breathe, we eat, we speak, we sweat for Mula Banda.
However fanciful the figures, hyping time-honored rags to riches dreams, to every aspiring star, a deal, a recording contract, is still the holy grail of music biz mythology.
Well, Dave?
Mark, great demo.
You get a contract, and that's like the greatest thing that ever happens to you in your life.
You get the contract for $150,000. Congratulations.
Somebody's saying we're going to give you $100,000 to go make a record. This is, the skies have opened up, and this is wonderful. This is a dream come true.
Mark?
You're just sort of glad to have the opportunity to make the record, and you're intimidated by everything else, and so you're not really asking a whole lot of questions except where do I sign?
So I saw the devil walk in the room, and I thought to myself, it's just the lighting. Don't worry about it.
I mean, you are not thinking about, should I maintain my T-shirt rights? Do I want to, keep my publishing?
The fire, the brimstone, it's nothing. It's just part of show business.
You meet these people, and you're like, isn't this great? We're going to make a record. We're going to do good work in the world.
Well, yeah, I should have realized when they took the blood out of my veins that it was just... But I was naive, so young.
We got burnt the first time we signed, we did this old 60s contract, which Australia had many of.
No, I got ripped off. It's not my first deal we got ripped off. I got ripped off a lot. I mean, you did.
All the way down the road, there was a series of rip-offs and manipulations and larceny.
They were giving people, these 3-4% contracts, and we own you and your children, And if you sing in the bath, we want it.
My songs were given away in perpetuity, which means forever.
Even though I both created and paid for my work, I will never own it or have any rights over it.
If that's no good, you better say no.
You know, record companies will try to get whatever they can get.
I can probably push it to 170. Mark? Don't go all quiet on me. What do you want, blood?
Effectively, you sign a piece of paper at the beginning of your career, and you're expected to live with that decision, good or bad, for the rest of your professional life.
A recording artist is in business, a professional whose life progresses through the industry on a series of stepping stones, contracts, with record labels, publishers, agents, promoters, sponsors, merchandisers, hundreds of pages, thousands of clauses. They'll need a guide.
I want to get a shot at the title. I want to get a shot at the garden fight. I got to get a manager.
For a few more clauses and about 20% of your earnings, you can have a manager.
I didn't come into the picture until the record company rang me up and said, "Hello, Ed, we've signed Dire Straits. Will you manage them?" And I said, "What a terrible name," and went off to see them at Dingwall's and just up the road and took them on.
So your problems are over. You've got an expert to steer you through the music biz maze.
If I look back to how I was when I started, I would have to say pathetic would come to mind. I was totally inexperienced. I was completely intimidated by the people I was meeting. The first time I ever went to Los Angeles, I was a nervous kid who was going around banging on doors which would not always open. And if they did open at all, I could peer in and see, you know, Architectural Digest gone mad inside this room. And some character with a suntan that looks like it's been sort of printed on comes out and says, "Hey, your band's great. Oh, we think you're great. It's all great." And then probably go,
It's earn while you learn.
well, the one thing you don't have to do in this profession to be a manager is to pass an exam. You only need one qualification, as Colonel Parker said. I'm Elvis's manager because I say I am and because Elvis says I am.
The mysterious symbiosis, artist-management. Colonel Tom Parker, a Dutchman masquerading as a Southern gentleman, was the very embodiment of ththose legendary manager Svengalis who become almost as famous as their protégés. You're a manager if you can manage to combine the roles of friend, father figure, fixer, confidant, entrepreneur, manipulator, image maker, cajoler, juggling expertise with the exploitation of your artist's gifts for mutual gain. To earn your 20%.
I regard myself as being a rich, fat, lucky bastard. What's really concerning me on all of this is that we are now going to be subject to New York law. That means that we're going to have to hire a whole New York firm of lawyers. That means double the expense. I'm not paying for it. Somebody else will pay for it. I'm not going to pay for it. Fine. Then we wait to hear from your lawyers, okay? Thanks for your call. Sarah, can you get me Ron on the phone?
Pop manager Tom Watkins of Bros, Pet Shop Boys, East 17 and 2/3 fame has a clear management philosophy.
I've said it a million times. You can't make chicken soup out of chicken shit. I would describe the management role very much more as a nose-wiping exercise.
I think it's a big mistake if you're in management to get into what I call personals. We do have some not very golden rules in my office that, for instance, I won't get tickets for people, and I won't deal with their mortgages, and I won't get the bicycle mended when there's a puncture. And in one notorious instance, I will not go and purchase a budgerigar in the middle of the night so that the artist's wife won't discover a dead budgie in her cage the following morning, and that's true. In our business, there are hundreds and hundreds of people who lose the ability to function because they are indulged because of money. The manager becomes a surrogate nanny and says things like, I'll get you a car to go to the airport. If Martin Offler wants to go to the airport, Martin Offler gets a car, gets in his own car. He knows that there are 3 pedals on the floor, and if he presses one of them, it will take him to Heathrow, and he goes.
Some managers are famous for their hands-on approach. Led Zeppelin's legendary manager, 20-stone ex-wrestler Peter Grant, was in the heavyweight mould.
Don't fucking talk to me, it's my bloody act. I did bet I'd leave you any time. You couldn't even get my starting line.
Those real heavy people you're talking about, they were all right. Yeah, they give you an envelope and you wouldn't have to count that sealed envelope. You knew the money was there. Those real heavy people, they're fine. It's the shifty ones, you know. You've got to watch. They've got a T-shirt deal on the side or something.
You don't know your fucking concessionaire. Your mate's selling the T-shirts.
He learnt the value of front in his early days with touring rock bands.
It was $2,000, 50% up front. You collect the other $1,000 on the night. And the guy didn't want to come up with the money and all that. And he suddenly pulled his gun out and he put it down on me. He said, "Oh, I'm going to shoot you." I said, "Not for $1,000, you're not. Don't be cheap," I said. I mean, we never ever got stiff for anybody. I wouldn't allow that.
New grunge rock band Some Have Fins admire the style.
We are looking for a nice, strong manager who's willing to beat people up if we don't get what we want. I said, that we were going to be bigger than Led Zeppelin in the advert. So this gentleman calls and he's saying, well, I'm interested in any band that's going to be bigger than Led Zeppelin. So I was sort of, it was early in the morning. I took his name down on the paper and he said, well, address it. He gave me a really posh address. And he says, address that to Peter Grant. And I was just like, Peter Grant, I got all nervous on the phone.
Don't you fucking around with my band, you horrible little man, you snotty little oink.
We're still talking to him. I sent him tapes and he says he's really busy at the moment with charity work, but he really loves the tracks and he's going to get back to me like this week, so. We actually are working with someone, a chap called Paul Birch, who he signed the Stone Roses to a label called FM Revolver before they were on Silvertone. And Stone Roses...
He seems really good as well.
He's a great guy.
It's only really worth managing the act if I'm able to get them a record deal. Otherwise, if there's no deal and they're going nowhere, then all we'll do is get ourselves tied up in business affairs, protracted negotiations over nothing.
First stop, the major labels. The majors have the financial resources, the market share, the promotional clout, and the distribution power to help an aspiring band make an impact in the crowded arena of popular culture. But first, you have to gain access to those arbiters of taste, the artist and repertoire department, A&R, sadly also known as Amana.
Okay, so this girl we're seeing today is Annie Roseberry at Elektra Records. As you know, Steve, they're part of Warner's and signed Metallica. So hopefully she's got a good pair of ears.
Getting a hearing from A&R is the first in a series of elaborate rites in the musical mutation from initiate to rock god. On any given day in the UK, over 40,000 are seeking a deal.
No doorbell.
Many are called, few are chosen.
Paul. Hi, Paul Birch from Revolver for Annie.
Of the 40,000, a mere 160 a year will get signed.
That's a good sign.
In an industry based on something as subjective and ephemeral as music, good signs are seized upon when trying to penetrate the inner sanctum.
Suspect it says. Either that, this is a cupboard, in fact. Maybe they work from a cupboard. To make an analogy, comparing it to, say, horses, for instance, right? There's almost an infinite number of horses. I mean, people do back the jockeys. So here I am. Whether I'm a jockey or not remains to be seen. I'm actually in the position of trainer at the moment, looking for a stable. Well, you think they give us a clue, actually, as to where they are. Let's try this one. It's got an E on it. Maybe these for Electro. Whether or not I become the jockey or the manager very much depends upon if I can be successful in getting them placed with a major label. This is a sharp contrast to their office in New York. Okay. Maybe we should go back down to reception and press the bell again and ask where they are. Excuse me, do you know how we get to Elektra Records? Excuse me, do you know where Elektra are? Elektra Records? Elektra Records? Straight on. It's Paul Birch from Revolver Records for Annie. I always think a band that's hunting for a deal isn't good enough to have one. If you're good enough to have one, you're hunted.
There's a new kid in town.
The fresh young manager soon learns the somewhat predatory nature of the business.
I was doing our original American record deal, which ended up with Warner Brothers, a company that we're very happy to be with. Another company that shall remain nameless was pursuing me around Los Angeles. Anyway, I go down to a record studio, and all of a sudden the door opens and this guy comes in. He says, I heard you were going to be down here. Would you come into the jacuzzi with me? I thought, hello, my luck's in. It's, try anything once said. So we go into this jacuzzi and it's empty. And he locks the door behind him. I think, oh, shit. Because I'm fairly straight in these areas. And he sits and he pulls himself up right next to me and he's literally here. And I'm thinking, there's nobody else in the room. And he goes, I've been authorised to offer you a 6-figure sum. And I said, you mean in advance? And he said, no. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, it's for you. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, what do you mean for Dire Straits? He said, no, it's for you. And he was here, and all I could think was, God, he's got really bad breath. He's got serious halitosis, this guy. I wish he'd move away from me. And I'm pulling back, and he's following me, and we're almost horizontal. And he's saying, it's like $250,000. And I'm so naive, and I'm thinking, that's not a very good advance for the whole of America. I said, can't you? I was thinking more in $500,000 or something. And he's going, oh, that's a bit. He said, I'll have to call head office about that. And we're sort of like, we're almost lying now on the bench. And I says, look, I'll have to get back to you. And I sort of whipped out from underneath him and ran and unlocked the door and ran out into the car park.
Some have Finns will be thrilled if their manager comes in for that sort of A&R pressure after their showcase gig.
Hopefully, the A&R men will turn up, because A&R men are notorious for saying, we'll be there, and they're not.
Being there is one thing, being right is another. Biz mythology is rife with A&R blunders. Convinced that the days of guitar groups was over, Decca's Dick Rowe passed on the Beatles. But on George Harrison's advice, he retrieved his reputation by signing the Rolling Stones, no questions asked. A Chrysalis Records executive gave an up-and-coming Irish group a quick 2-number listen at a London club before returning to his chauffeur-driven limousine, the engine still running. U2 played on into history, ultimately signing to Island Records, whose owner, Chris Blackwell, further distinguished himself by passing on Culture Club and Madonna. Ensign Records snapped up the Boomtown Rats and Sinead O'Connor, but just couldn't see the appeal of Dire Straits, one of the biggest selling acts of all time.
I thought we did it last week.
To be fair, a good A&R department is inundated.
The unsolicited tapes. Where's it from?
From Welling in Kent.
Oh my God. Nothing good ever came out of Welling in Kent.
Alright, next.
Band from Bristol.
Yeah.
Long hair, flying V guitars, leather jackets. You know what it sounds like. Look at the bloody titles.
I've heard it before I played it.
Yes, I think you have. Oh! One of those.
Thanks, boys.
Moody in the Woods round Bristol. First you go through them and weed out all the ones that are sent by people that we actually recognise.
This is Robin, who used to be in the Aeroplanes.
Oh, right. Okay.
Oh, and what's the first song called?
What's the name?
Aeroplane.
It doesn't reach out and grab you by the balls. I hate to think that was going to slip back into the listen to pile.
All over the world, an army of A&R fights a rising tide of demos. A&R is a stressful epicenter of an anxious industry, trying to second-guess fickle tastes, cultural trends,
Performance bloody artists, I shit 'em!
and mass consumption patterns. Share values ride on subjective judgment.
This girl is obviously under the illusion that if she sends out these tapes, they're going to seriously be listened to.
Get punchy now. I can see this on the Radio 1 playlist. Bastards Against Everything. I mean, the first track is called Sick. They sound like they're bastards that would do anything for a record deal, actually.
To the hundreds of tapes, add invites to 50 gigs a week. Small wonder appetites are jaded.
We'll probably end up with a half a dozen labels there. I mean, that's pretty good. If we had 30 labels there, I think that would probably be discouraging for the labels that attended, because they'd say, every A&R man in London is at this gig. So someone's going to sign them, and it's going to be a bidding war.
Well, we'll see how many turn out. They're not in them.
It's so difficult because they're going to say they're going to come.
The buzz is all about getting people here.
We can tell. It's really down to Paul whether or not he's, what kind of a job he's done.
Well, the A&R guest list looks good.
John on here from Epic, Nick Manders from EMI, but we don't expect Nick. Kate Askey at Warner's. We're expecting a couple of people from WEA. Chris Cook at Arista. It's 35 people, so this room could be just a guest list.
Hope springs eternal.
So what time is it? It's 20 to 9.
Oodles of time.
Well, yeah, I mean, did you hear the one about the early A&R man?
No one did.
Exactly.
Nobody showed yet?
No, but I mean, A&R men don't turn up on time. It's like being first at a party.
Yes.
You don't do it, right? It's socially uncool.
No, I mean, if you guys get a deal tonight...
Patrick, would you do me a service? When these A&R people come in, right? I mean, assuming they talk to us.
Yes, typical these.
Because they don't on the phone. But assuming they do, right? Can you get the drinks? £10.
We've got to get this on camera. All Birch handing money over. Right, well, that's the money you owe me. Now what about the flow?
Kate, this is a friend of mine, Patrick Hayes, by the way, from RPM.
Yes, Patrick. We didn't actually meet, but I was mooning around.
The moment of truth. How many A&Rs turned up? Usually hunting in packs, the A&R's natural habitat is the dark. Ah, there's one. Veteran managers and bands develop X-ray vision to distinguish them from the punters. The band gives it everything. The fans get it on. Is Warner's International A&R getting into it? Nope, she's getting out.
What the fuck do you have to do? I'm gonna say. It's okay, you can be.
I'll be completely honest with you. I think that they're lacking in songs, personally.
The music biz is forever having to put a brave face on things.
It's the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of them didn't turn up. 20% of them deserve to keep their jobs. 80% of them will eat shit. If their bosses could be a fly on the wall in their meetings, and then go through what managers go through and go through what artists go through, most of those A&R men, they wouldn't be in their seats for 5 minutes. They'd be in and they'd be out. Kate, God bless her, she stayed till the end. And
she left halfway through.
Actually, I'll be quite. She left at 10:30. I timed everything. At 10:30, she walked into the bar. She was just so hot in there because there's so many lights on and stuff.
Management reassurances aside, the band has its own deadline and is threatening to disband.
We sort of thought, right, we'll give it to the beginning of August. If we haven't had a deal, then we better start, covering our asses.
Just remember this: enthusiasm in this industry is replaced by something far more important: tenacity
and commitment.
Okay, look, don't take it too hard. The show was great.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Give me a shout tomorrow. We'll come up with another plan.
And now the manager needs his own morale boosting.
It's totally wrong, because anybody who wants to be successful in their business needs to be committed. His reaction tonight is purely because of the build-up, that you've done your job right, you've built him up to do his absolute best performance, because people are turning up. It hasn't happened, they want an instant result, and as a result he's deflated. It's an instant reaction.
Yes, of course. I'm sure tomorrow he'll feel differently about it.
I hope he does. If he doesn't, then he's not committed enough. Okay, not everybody turned up, but goodness me, doesn't that happen every night of the week? Yes, it does.
The myth is fame and fortune, reality for most bands, poverty and obscurity. Sony signing The refused that fate.
I've been turned down by every record company in the country, even independents like Rough Trade have turned me down 3 times.
But I had this incredible self-belief. I just kept taking me little demos around, and really, I knew that something would happen at some stage.
Self-belief is vital in the search for a deal. Madonna's faith in herself eventually made converts.
I was in hospital. My assistant, Michael Rosenblatt, called me and said, Mark's brought in something really great, this girl Madonna. And I'm laying in this hospital vegetating. You know, I hadn't shaved in weeks and just laying there. And I said, well, send it over. And I listened to it a few times and I really, really liked it. So I said, look, I want to sign this girl, Madonna. Have her come to the hospital so I can meet her so we can, you know, get this done. She came in and she wanted to be signed even more than I wanted to sign her because she had been trying to get a deal for a very, very, very long time. I don't think she could have cared less at that time. What I was wearing, if I was laying in a coffin instead of because I didn't want her to think, you know, this guy's going to sign her and then he's not going to be around very long, you know. So I don't think that's even crossed her mind. She just, as long as I could get my hand out to sign something, she was she was so anxious to get started.
Signing on the dotted line, the ultimate goal, often the end of a long struggle, sometimes the beginning of one.
There's a great chunk in a record contract called definitions. Most people in my profession don't look carefully enough at the definitions, and you'd be amazed what's in the definitions.
An eager band is usually interested in one thing, the advance.
Come on, 185 then, that's my final offer.
There was a little bit of that went on, you know, various people sort of phoning up and said, well, oh, look, how much did they give you? Well, I'll open the checkbook. And it was like...
Mark? All right, 200 grand.
Brilliant. It's a deal.
To get all the hype headlines in the trendy magazines, this man's got pure talent.
A bidding war led to a six-figure advance for jazz funksters Jamiroquai.
Welcome, Jamiroquai.
Critical acclaim, chart success, rocketing sales, surely fame and fortune were in his grasp.
Oh, I'm scared when I went on top of the pops, I think. Everyone says, hey, you've gone mega, you know, and you haven't at all. Rubbish.
Many acts in the top 20 are actually in a financial hole.
You're like, where did all my money go? You know, I had this advance, it's all gone.
How could that be? You know, and the band is like $2 million in the hole after having a gold record and a platinum record.
Because your advance, recording and video costs, roughly £250,000, are recouped from your royalties, not company profits. So if you sell 250,000 albums, you may still be paying off costs while the company's $1 million in profit.
All monies paid to or on behalf of the lender or artist, other than royalties, shall be treated as non-returnable advances.
I know what recoupment means. Recoupable.
I recouped.
That's different to non-recoupable.
I go squeeze, you know. I recoup.
See, returnable is to non-recoupable anyway. If something is non-returnable, it means they can't get it back.
I recoup the advance they're giving me, and I recoup the money that had been spent on recording the album.
Yeah, until you've recouped, basically. You will not get royalties until you've recouped, which is one of the great tragedies of being an artist, you see, because you don't get it.
Everything in life is recoupable.
It's always recouped against your royalties and stuff.
But the big catch is, it doesn't matter what you recoup, because then they said, well, actually, you've recouped, so you've earned X. And I went, cool, lovely. Can I have it? You know? When do I get it?
I found out my lawyer if you want to ask him. He probably wrote it.
They said, but you've started album 2 and you've already spent 60 grand on that. So you have us.
You can make millions of dollars for the company and owe them money.
Because it's cross-recoupable.
Cross-collateralization.
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 But it basically means that, for instance, even if you put out, if I wasn't cross-collateralized, or if I was cross-collateralized.
So if I've got 2 albums out, and that one sold 100,000 copies and one sold 10 copies, and there's royalty coming in from the 100,000, all of a sudden my royalties will dry up on that because they've suddenly put the debt from the other one against it on the balance sheet, if you like. What an artist thinks he's getting with one hand is being clawed back with the other hand via devices known as packaging deductions.
Artists' royalties average 15% of 90% of the wholesale price, 10% deducted for breakages. Never mind that CDs are unbreakable. Oh yes, you get less royalties on CD sales. In fact, there's a royalty reduction for any format except a vinyl record in a plain paper bag, which nobody makes anymore.
They have the right to put out your work on things that haven't been invented. And when they do this, you have to take a royalty rate of half, even though it hasn't been invented, so they have no idea what the costs are going to be.
I just heard about something the other day about Take That. Take that. Well, take this. Take this. In any single month period, if they have television adverts, take this, then they get half-rate royalties. How you like me now? How you like me now, huh? So that's so what's that? You sold 10 million albums, Robbie. Oh, really? Did I? Yeah. And but the thing is, you see, we can only give you the money for 5 million because we just spent 60 grand on an advert for you. Is that right? You don't mind, do you? No, great. I just love it. I love being a pop star.
Is anybody home?
If getting a deal seems hard, try getting out of one.
It's a major surprise to me that no artist has ever walked up, taking the elevator up to the 32nd floor in the CBS building and sprayed the entire place with machine gun fire.
Negative thoughts from singer-songwriter Amy Mann. Why, after a sellout tour of the UK and an album released to critical acclaim, she should be feeling like a winner.
You cannot imagine what a loser I felt like a year ago. Truly.
It's the same old problem. To quote Tom Waits, the big print giveth and the small print taketh away.
At the point when you realize the kind of deal that you're getting, you're so appalled that you truly can't even think about it. You just can't think about it or you'll go nuts. Term shall mean a period of time running from the commencement date and ending X amount of months after the delivery of all the masters and fulfillment of the minimum commitment. When you start looking over your contract and figuring it out, they're so complicated. The periods of time between delivery of one album and the delivery of the next album are herein called periods. So you just don't know. You think, well, I'll never, The first period is the period in which the first album is to be delivered. The second period is the period of time in which the second album is to be recorded and delivered. The third period is the period of time in which the third album is to be recorded and delivered. The fourth period is the period of time.
Surprise.
Oh, come on in.
Art and commerce are the twin poles of the industry.
You have just won £17 million! How do you feel?
Amy Mann's a singer-songwriter, perhaps more accurately a songwriter who sings. Her raison d'etre is her songs, which tend to be tuneful, if intense, personal statements. When big sales on her first 2 albums failed to materialise, Epic's A&R department had an idea. Why not collaborate with a writer with more of a, shall we say, top 40 orientation?
I said, I think we should just go our separate ways because it's obviously not a good match. You don't like what we're doing. No, we love what you're doing. As long as it's completely different from what you're doing, we will love it. That's basically the thing. We love what you're doing, but see, that's not what I'm doing. And I don't even know if they can tell the difference. And the message was really clear. We're going to kill your records until you do this. And we're not going to release you because we know you'd like to go.
Option. A record company can drop an artist, but an artist can't drop a record company.
I had 7 more records to make for these people, so I was in forever.
Always isn't always.
And after the third record, which was completely, astonishingly unsupported by the record company, to the extent that when we toured and we sold out every show, I never saw a single record company person at any show. And I would visit radio stations and they'd say, oh, you have a record out. Well, Epic never sent us a copy. So I thought, that's remiss to the point of criminality. If you keep an artist on your label, you have got to do something. That is your part of the bargain. My part is to supply you with music. That's what I do. I'm the artist. My job is the art part of it. Your job is the selling part. So if you don't do your job, but you try to do my job, what is that about? So we have this meeting, and they said, I'm not making another record for these people. And they sort of indicated, you know, in subsequent talks that we could buy our way out for a huge chunk of cash.
This left her in jail in industry parlance when a knight in shining armour came to her rescue.
Nothing was saving our day. The famous Irving Azoff at Giant Records.
But there was to be no fairy tale ending.
So we started negotiating this contract, which took months. You know, we had agreed on the main points, but the standard Waters contract is about 90 pages, so months. Speaking of course, since you did departed, oh, you stupid thing. At the very last minute, the day actually I put my signature on this contract, they backed out of it. Stopping it all before it even started. And then the rest of the industry says, ooh, what's wrong with her? Because Giant backed out on this deal. She must be truly difficult. It's just like you to sit back and just play it dumb. We had signed a letter of agreement with him. I suppose I could have taken him to court, but you don't take the Irving Azoff to court. You don't do that. That's also brands you as being even more insanely difficult in the industry. Bad enough that the guy backs out on a deal. We had already started recording. And at the point where the deal fell through, my manager was fronting the money because he thought he'd get it right back. He said, we should just keep going because, you know, I'm sure we can get a deal and let's just keep recording. You know, my records may fail elsewhere, but at least it's a different place, you know? At least it's not guaranteed to go directly into the toilet. You know, just one chance I might miss the toilet. That's all I asked for. I just didn't want to be guaranteed a failing.
Released finally from Epic, Amy Mann has found artistic and tour support at her new label Imago. Though massive sales still elude her, music press accolades and a cult following have vindicated her stubborn refusal to compromise.
Now when anybody's labeled a difficult artist, I think, a person with integrity. I'm on their side. Thank you very much. If the industry thinks you're difficult, you're probably swinging.
If the industry thinks you're difficult, they'll see you in court. The lawyer and publisher of one of the world's biggest stars await their client on the steps of the Royal Courts of Justice. Running the gauntlet of the media attention his fame has brought him, George Michael has come to face the music on Judgment Day in his case against Sony. In the last 2 years, George has spent less time on stage than in legal conference.
They have this language they've created that only they speak. What, here to with the hair forward and all that?
Here on after the party of the first part shall
double speak, so it kind of like you follow in a sentence and it seems to sort of change and twist and turn and you can't really follow it.
And it can be reinterpreted by another lawyer who decides he doesn't think that what it says what it says.
And that's why lawyers make such a lot of money, because they write contracts for each other.
The media pack stand poised to report on a case that could revolutionise music business law. George has been here before.
George, have you made a lot of money?
No, not really. And what money we've made, we probably won't get to see because it gets spent before you get to see it. there are certain reasons why we haven't made anything like as much money as most people would probably believe.
George and Andrew couldn't believe it when after 4 hit singles and a #1 album, they were still borrowing bus fare home after a live TV appearance. The lads wanted out of their Innovision contract.
And this is one of the famous deals of all time because it was absolutely appalling, this deal. You know, signed on the back of a car bonnet in a dark car park in North London on a wet Saturday night sort of thing. If you don't sign this, your career's over.
Numerous injunction suits and countersuits later, a solo George Michael found megastardom and riches under a CBS contract. So why is he back in court?
George Michael's got a crap deal. Crap deal. It's a public document now. Most of it's attached to the back of the writ. And of course, as soon as the writ was issued, I went scurrying off to get my copy because we thrive on seeing what everybody else is getting. Not least because we're all worried that somebody's getting better than we're getting.
Which reveals a relatively low royalty rate for a superstar, options to continue the deal all on the company's side, no guarantee of worldwide release, and crucially, master recordings which were paid for out of artists' royalties, owned by the company. Still, George has made millions and not everyone sympathises.
If they're going to plough a lot of money into you, they're obviously going to try and structure a deal that's going to give them a chance of getting their money back, which is fair enough.
It's no good being like him, 6, 7 albums down the line with all your money sprouting out your pockets and then saying that you were used, they just made you a pop star, you didn't want to be one. Rubbish. Absolute rubbish.
Say, for example, that deal hadn't have worked out and they maybe sunk £1 million into it. And he said, well, it hasn't worked out, and he walks away. What chance would they have had in court if they'd have gone in and said, look, we put all this money into it and it's failed miserably, can we have it back, please? We don't like the deal that we did, we'd like to change it.
Give all the money back.
But in true Faustian fashion, there may be no escape.
The artist contract with the record companies it's like a deal with the devil. It's almost like organized crime, and George is fighting it. That's really, really good.
As the saying goes, where there's a hit, there's a writ. Elton John and Bernie Taupin won millions from their publisher, who'd been doubling deductions through his own foreign subsidiaries. Shocking maybe, but a standard industry scam. Holly Johnson of Frankie Goes to Hollywood sued ZTT Records citing onerous conditions, an advance of £250 against 5% royalties. The company had total artistic and budgetary control, when costs for the second album, recorded in the company's own studio, soared to £750,000, £500,000 on mixing costs alone, all recoupable from the band's royalties. Frankie found it hard to relax. The contract was found to be in restraint of trade. Every deal promises fame and fortune, but you must know the difference between gross and net.
If someone said to you, well, if you earn £100,000, I get 20% of your own. You thought, it's 100 grand, did you say?
But you end up penniless and sue your manager.
They made fortunes. But I mean, when you bought a new car every week and sort of traded the old one at a huge loss and didn't seem to care, I mean, I suppose you can expect that kind of folly, really, can't you? I remember one of the early rows that we had with Luke and Matt, and he said, it's all right for you, you got loads of Picassos and stuff like that, I ain't even got an house. And I pointed out to him that I had worked for some sort of 15 years in the industry before that, and worked very hard and worked with a great number of acts.
When we started looking at his contract in depth, we realised that we were idiots, basically.
They're not particularly bright. They never particularly understood the industry that they were in. They never had any control over their finances.
By that time, we didn't want to update the contract. We, in fact, wanted to leave the contract completely.
We spent a hell of a lot of money in the high courts to prove that we did nothing. I mean, we spent some £200,000 to win £46,000 back, and it was no real victory, really. It was just, giving the lawyers lots more money and really sort of costing us a lot of money to claim our innocence, because we've never looked after a band's money. We don't do that. I'm sure they were expecting me to make a big fuss and to sue them, but I mean, I saw no point in suing anybody who didn't have anything in the first place, and I think I hardly want to kick anybody when they're down, and I don't think you could get any further down than either of the Bros boys are at the moment. So I saw, I'm not particularly that cruel. I'm something of a bastard, but not that cruel.
Ever since the day I began being a professional musician, I was dealing with unscrupulous people, would-be managers, people who would sign us up for very, very small royalty rates and then dump us when we didn't sell records for them, production company people who would sign you lock, stock, and barrel, where I was signed away my copyrights at one time, I signed away my publishing royalties. Oh yeah. I didn't know what I was signing. I was just happy to be able to make a living as a musician. I wasn't aware of what I was entitled to.
When he became aware, an older and wiser Billy Joel sued his manager for a missing $2 million and won. The fact that his manager was also his brother-in-law was merely a painful complication.
Now, I'm not bitter about it. I've survived. Had I not been able to make the stretch to this point, I might have become a very embittered person, and there are people walking around to this day who are very embittered.
Viz. George Michael, who's just heard that the judgment has gone against him on every count.
When I was 18 years old, I entered into a recording contract with CBS Records. At 30 years old, my contract still has 10 years to run. I am shocked and extremely disappointed at the judgment of Mr. Justice Parker.
I've seen 12 album deals. If you've got an artist that's recording once every 2 or 3 years, you're talking about 20 or 30 years of somebody's life. And every time you renegotiate the contract, the company says, well, we want another 2 albums, so you stick those on the end. There are some people who'll be making albums when they're dead. The Grateful Dead have done that.
Getting the deal is the youthful dream. But behind the hype of the megastars and their mega deals lies hard-nosed business reality.
It's really hard for anyone as an outsider to say how big these deals are. Obviously they get blown up to sort of scratch the ego of the artist. If Michael Jackson, announces his deal at X, then Prince and Janet Jackson want to announce their deal at X plus 2.
More than anything, she wanted to have a record company.
The Prince deal made Prince a vice president of Warner Brothers A&R, and as far as I can tell, that was done to give him stock options.
The Madonna and Prince deals, as I understand, the label deals are cross-collateralized with the artist's own accounts. So if Madonna puts out a record by an artist she's signed and it doesn't recover its investment, the money comes from her royalty account.
Stop press Prince wants out to deliver his album commitment and walk away from Warner's. Lately, he's been seen with Slave emblazoned on his head.
We have very strong grounds for appeal, and we hope to have the appeal heard as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for your time and for all the support that I've received since this action began. Thank you.
George, will you sing for Sony again?
In the real world, many might welcome George's problems. And the fact is, recording companies are in business to make a profit. But it's a strange business whose assets are artists and whose revenue flows from the emotional impact of music.
Sing for Sony again.
I believe it's the unstated aim of the music industry, and particularly the record companies, to keep the artist at the very bottom of the economic totem pole, preferably forever, but certainly as long as they can conceivably manage.
I doubt if there is any artist who has had any longevity in the business that you would speak to who got away without being burned somehow. Almost every artist that you talk to didn't get away clean. Nobody gets away clean.